The reliability, sources of evidence, let's talk about this. The reliability of audit evidence is influenced by its source and by its nature and is dependent on the individual circumstances under which it is obtained. Generalizations about the reliability of various kinds of audit evidence can be made. However, such generalizations are subject to important exceptions. So something we talked about, building on it a little bit more. Even when audit evidence is obtained from sources external to the entity, circumstances may exist that could affect the reliability of the information obtained. Let's say you are getting a bank statement from the client's bank. Okay, we think that we can trust that, right? Because it's an external source. But let's say that the client has a 50% investment in that bank. So, normally we would trust that bank, but now we might not be able to because, well, we see they're kind of a related party there. For another example here, audit evidence obtained from an independent external source may not be reliable if the source is not knowledgeable. Let's think about that as well. Yes, we can go into Bloomberg and look up the value of some sort of stock or debt instrument. However, if we're asking like a person, we go to a person and say, hey, can you value this investment they have because it's not listed on Bloomberg? If the person's just kind of a moron and they don't do their due diligence, even though that person's independent and they're a third party and they're external, we might not be able to trust them. So make sure you are working with competent, intelligent individuals. Generalizations about the reliability of audit evidence. While recognizing that exceptions may exist, the following generalizations about the reliability of audit evidence are useful. Here are items that we're going to see that we can apply to audit evidence. And in general, audit evidence is more reliable when it's obtained from knowledgeable, independent sources. Independent, I'd say, is something to know. I mean, you should definitely know both of them, but the exam and in real life make more of a big deal about independent sources. Knowledgeable, that should just kind of be a no-brainer. We should only be using knowledgeable sources outside the entity, so external. Audit evidence that is generated internally is more reliable when related controls imposed by the entity are effective, meaning you can trust reports the entity gives you much more if you've assessed internal controls and they're solid. You have SOC reports on them if you've assessed internal controls and you deem that the control risk is very low. Audit evidence obtained directly by the auditor, so for example, observing the application of an internal control, is more reliable than audit evidence obtained indirectly or by inference. For example, inquiry about the application of control. So if you watch it or you reperform the process, the internal control, that is much more reliable than if you just look at something and say, yeah, that's probably good, or someone else does it, right, indirectly, or by inferring about it, inquiring about the application of the control. If you ask people, hey, within the entity, hey, is this internal control effective? And they tell you, sure, it is. That's not going to be as effective as if you went in and watched it being done yourself. Audit evidence is more reliable when it exists in documentary form, meaning put it in writing. Just like we'll see this actually, I think pretty much throughout all the exams, right? Even in reg, put it in writing when we get to liability and all that. Oral evidence is not as effective as something in writing. Documentary form, paper, electronic, or other medium. So written record of a meeting is more reliable than. So if you are writing down minutes of a meeting as people are saying things, if you're having a meeting and you're writing down right then and there, that's more reliable than if you're in a meeting and then you go back and try to think what was said during that meeting and you try to put it down on paper. Lastly here, audit evidence provided by original documents, big one here. Original documents is more reliable than audit evidence provided by photocopies or facsimiles. Get the actual source document. Now, obviously, you may not be able to get that, right? My birth certificate and my actual social security card are probably, well, social security card is not that secure, but my actual real documentation for me personally is the best source that someone has of verifying who I am. However, I'm not going to just give everyone my actual real document. So if it's something really secure, you may not be able to get that, and that's understandable. You may not be getting the original source documents for when the client incorporated themselves, but you could possibly look up their tax filings online through the IRS. You could look up certain sources, and that's quite reliable. Authenticity, we mentioned this a little bit before, how it's not your job. The audit rarely involves authentication of documentation, and nor is the auditor trained as or expected to be an expert in that process. So we've mentioned that a little bit before, but the auditor should consider the reliability. It's not your job to be an absolute expert, but think about the process in which you got and obtained the documentation. For example, photocopies, right? If anything is just a screenshot of something that possibly could be edited or modified, that's something you want to take into account and consider. Accuracy and completeness about audit evidence. Well, let's be concerned. Possibly, let's say, is there a page missing from this documentation? That's a problem, right? Maybe all the documentation that you get from someone is accurate, but it's missing a page, and that's just as bad as, omission of a lie is just as bad as the lie itself. When information produced by the entity is used by the auditor to perform further audit procedures, the auditor should obtain audit evidence about the accuracy and completeness of the information. In order for the auditor to obtain reliable audit evidence, the information upon which the audit procedures are based needs to be sufficiently complete and accurate. For example, in auditing revenue by applying standard prices to records of sales volume, the auditor should consider the accuracy of the price information and the completeness and accuracy of the sales volume data. So right here, right, you're auditing revenue, making sure the revenue balance and amounts and transactions are correct and valid. What are you going to do? Well, you want to get price information. So one way, revenue, let's say, is $100. We got $100 of revenue, right? And the client is saying, okay, we sold 10 items at $10 each. That's great and everything, but I don't know, can you really trust that they actually sold these pieces of inventory for $10 each? Possibly, possibly not, but you're going to want to get additional audit evidence. Now, how could you verify that they actually sold these pieces of inventory for $10 each? Well, I would actually go to the purchasers, the buyers, those who bought these pieces of inventory from the client, and ask them, did this cost you $10, right? And look at the invoices, look at the sales documentation there, making sure that what you get is accurate. Obtaining audit evidence about the completeness and accuracy of the information produced by the entity's information system may be performed concurrently with the actual audit procedure applied to the information. When obtaining such evidence is an integral part of the procedure itself. We want to make sure that the information we get, even if it's from within the client system, that could have been modified, right? It's a big company. You think, okay, maybe it's fine, right? We're not going to be too worried about them editing their prices within their own accounting information system, but we want to be professionally skeptic and understand, can we verify that? In other situations, the auditor may have obtained audit evidence of the accuracy and completeness of such information by testing controls over the production and maintenance of the information. However, in some situations, the auditor may determine that additional procedures are needed. So, for example, these additional procedures may include using computer-assisted audit techniques to recalculate that information. So this is something that you may see on the exam. That's kind of what we're talking about here. These CATs, these computer-assisted audit techniques. These techniques could be verifying any changes within the system. You could be looking in the accounting system and see, okay, were there any modifications to the prices listed in the system? Anything like that. Any additional tools and softwares you use could help you to verify anything within the client's system. Assurance that we get from evidence. The auditor ordinarily obtains more assurance from consistent audit evidence obtained from different sources or of a different nature than from items of audit evidence considered individually. We want to get multiple pieces of evidence from multiple different sources. In addition, obtaining audit evidence from different sources or of a different nature may indicate that an individual item of audit evidence is not reliable. The more sources you get, the more you can see, does everything match up? For example, corroborating information obtained from a source independent of the entity may increase the assurance the auditor obtains from a management representation. Conversely, when the audit evidence obtained from one source is inconsistent with that obtained from another, the auditor should determine what additional audit procedures are necessary to resolve this inconsistency. We've got this cost-benefit analysis, whether it's on the client side or from the audit side. That's always something when it comes to audits. The auditor may consider the relationship between the cost of obtaining audit evidence and the usefulness of that information obtained. If it's just going to cost you too much, if it's going to be such a process to go track down that audit evidence, it may not be worth your time. However, the matter of difficulty or expense involved is not in itself a valid basis for omitting in a procedure where there is no alternative. So if there's no alternative, if you got to fly all the way across the country to go talk to someone in person and get a document from them, if that's the only way to do it, and without doing that, you wouldn't be able to sufficiently validate your opinion, Sorry, you're going to have to go fly halfway across the country and do it. Hey there! Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material? We'll do it together. Tap into the power of CPA.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.